Hey guys, this week's project is going to be a cup of hot cocoa, but we are going to make it look three-dimensional. For this project, you'll actually need two papers, one for the background and then one for the cup. So the first thing I'm going to do is kind of sketch out my background. And you can use a pencil or a Sharpie to start this, or really any type of writing utensil. I'm going to start by adding a horizon line. So this will separate the ground or the table where my cup is sitting on from the wall or the sky. And I'm going to put it a little closer to the top than the bottom. Now, underneath that, I'm going to draw a plate on my table, and I want to make it nice and big, but I also want to make it look like I'm seeing the plate from the side. So I want to draw it as an oval, not a circle. And I want it to be close to the bottom because my cup of cocoa will be sitting on this plate. So I'm going to make it nice and large here, kind of near the bottom of my page. And you could add additional details to your plate. You can add a second line on the inside. I'm going to use some crayons to add some details and some colors. So I'm not going to color in my whole plate, but I'm going to go around the edges and add some bright colors. Kind of give it some fun looking shadows here, just around the edges. That way my plate is still kind of white, but I'm adding some funky shadows. You could do patterns or really anything you'd like. Now on the background, I'm going to add a little bit of color to the table and the walls so that they stand out from my mug when I add it. And you can use paint, you can use crayons, you can use markers, really whatever you've got at home. And even if you had colored paper, if you had construction paper, you could even cut and glue these colors instead of using a white page. But I'm going to start with a white page and just add kind of I'm coloring really lightly, kind of with the side of my crayon to fill this area in. But I don't want to spend so long coloring in as dark as I can. So I'm just filling in with the side of my crayon, getting kind of a light value on there, but making sure it's all filled in. Now I want to make my wall a different color. So I use a different color for that, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to use kind of the side of my crayon here and just do kind of a light value all over. Now you could add patterns to your wall. You could make it look like wallpaper, or you could even put pictures on your wall. You could have there's a lot of things you could do. Now I'm going to keep my wall and my tabletop here kind of solid, boring a little bit, because I'm going to make my mug really patterned and detailed. All right, so I've got my background kind of all ready to go here. And I'm going to need a second sheet of paper to make my mug. And I want kind of a strip of paper about the same length as my first page. And however tall this paper is, that's how tall your mug is going to be. It's going to stick out like this. So you might want to test it and just make sure that you're happy with the size. You could make it really big and tall or kind of short. It's up to you. So I'm going to stick with this one, and I'm actually going to fold back the short sides of this paper just a little bit, about half an inch, not that much. I want to fold them both back the same direction here, because I only need to color the space in between those fold lines. So what I'm going to do is kind of draw out with my Sharpie here some patterns, and you could really add anything to your cup. You don't have to add horizontal lines like I'm adding. You could draw characters, pictures, whatever you'd like. And I'm just going to add some kind of simple patterns here, some shapes. And then I'm going to color this in completely. That's kind of why I didn't spend a ton of time on my background, I just made it kind of plain and simple because I knew that I would be coloring a lot on my mug. Just kind of adding in some shapes here. You could do words or characters or letters. If you did add words, I would try to draw them in like block style or bubble style lettering. All right, so now I'm going to go through and I'm going to color everything, like I said, everything in between those two fold lines, including the background space. If you had paint at home, you could certainly use paint. You could use marker. You can use colored pencils, oil pastels, whatever you've got. You could color this with anything. And it might look kind of neat too to have your mug be colored with different media than your background. So it'd be cool too. Or you could even mix. You could use crayons and markers on this part of your project. Maybe I'll do that. So I am going to make sure that wherever I have two shapes touching, they're not the same color because I don't want to spend all this time drawing my pattern and then, kind of color over it and make it disappear. But I'm going to repeat a lot of the colors that I'm using so that I do kind of have a consistent pattern here. And you'll notice too that on my background, I colored really lightly, but on this part, I'm pushing down hard with that crayon and making the colors a lot brighter, a lot darker. All right, now as I'm finishing up here, you may still have a long ways to go, and that's all right. You can pause this and catch up. And when you're completely done coloring your mug and you've filled in all your white spots and colored everything between those two fold lines, then we're ready to add it on. So I'm going to get my background back here, ready to go. And I'm going to be gluing my mug kind of right here so that it looks like it's sitting on the plate. So I'm going to need to fold those flaps back, and that's where I'm going to put the glue. I want to put a thin line of glue on each one of those flaps. Then I want to carefully kind of pick it up, and I'm going to bend it so it's curved, so it's sticking out. And I'm going to put my hands here on the inside. So I'm kind of holding those two flaps down, got my fingers on the flaps. And I want to count to at least 30, but long enough to make sure that that glue is sticking and it's not going to slide away. Now, if you look at it directly from the front, it looks like your mug is kind of sticking out, but it's 3D. So we're going to add a couple more details. Right now, my mug does not have a handle, and I would like to add one. So I'm going to take, this is the remaining piece of the paper that I used to cut this out, and I'm going to lay it kind of right next to my mug. And I'm going to draw, you can use pencil or Sharpie, 2 curved lines right where I want the handle of my mug to go. And after I draw them in, I'm going to either color it or add a pattern, somehow to make it kind of match my mug here. And I think I'll use this blue color. And I'm going to do a solid colored mug handle here and make it match one of the colors I used on my mug. Okay, now I'll need to cut that out as well. I want to cut the inside out, the inside shape there, and also the outside. So it looks like a giant letter C. Now, there's 2 ways you could do this. If you wanted to make this sticking out as well, you could fold a little tiny bit of your shape, the ends of your letter C here back, and glue this to the side of the mug so it's sticking out. You could also just glue it flat onto your piece of paper. Either way, it still looks like a handle. I'm going to make mine 3D, so I'm going to add a tiny dot to those little flaps that I folded back. And this might be a little tricky, but I'm going to hold both the outside and the inside. I've got my fingers on inside my mug so I can kind of press it together because that glue is sticky and I want to give it a minute to dry a little bit so my handle doesn't slide down. Whoops, I did not hold it quite long enough. I'm going to try again. Helps if you count to at least 30. And especially since I'm trying to glue it on top of that waxy crayon, it might need a little extra time. Now, the very last step of this project is kind of optional, but if you have cotton balls at home, and I didn't have cotton balls, but I have this kind of like polyester fluff from that you would put inside a stuffed animal, you can glue these so it looks like steam is kind of coming out of the top of your mug. And if you don't have any cotton balls at home, you could even glue marshmallows. If your parents say it's okay, if you have marshmallows at home, you could glue those on to make it look like there's marshmallows at the top of your hot cocoa. Or you could use cotton balls, or even if you have old pillows or stuffed animals and mom and dad or whoever you live with says it's okay to use the inside fluff from those, you could use that. I bet you could find something in your house to add your steam or even some marshmallows. And that's our finished 3D mug.